to see everybody, and welcome to those that may watch this replay. My husband Colin and I in Minnesota have worked with men and women in recovery for over 20 years. Tonight, you'll learn about the field of nutrigenomics and the pathway through addiction. You'll hear highlights from a study of people connected to a ministry we know called Lost Sheep Ministries. This group daily took a nutraceutical for 6 months, and we documented what occurred. You'll hear about this nutraceutical. It's all natural patent activator that can be transformative at the cellular level for you and those you care about. Our speaker this evening is Jacqueline Shepard. She learned of Lost Sheep Ministries' work in Minnesota and offered their director, Dave Johnson, to do a study group with some of his people. Dave asked me to administer the test group. My husband is on the Lost Sheep Ministries board. We've spent time with Mrs. Shepard and her husband in their home. She's the real deal. Jackie has over 50 years of research concerning addiction. Her extensive experience has helped thousands gain physical, emotional, mental, and addictive recoveries. She's presently working on another book, ADHD, ADD, and Autism. She's a wife, a grandmother, founder of a private school, co-founder of International Prayer Ministry, health counselor. She has a book out called The Silent Takeover, How the Body Hijacks the Mind. And of course, she's a friend to many. Jackie, please share your wisdom tonight.
Thank you, Mary. I have an idea we're going to have some people jumping on as we're going along, because you know how sometimes it is you go, wait a minute, what was I supposed to be doing tonight? But the major group we're trying to reach are some addictive ministry leaders. So Mary will have this recording and she'll be able to share it. So yeah, Mary was talking a bit about my background. I think sometimes people are surprised because I look fairly normal to find out that I'm from a highly addictive family. My father was institutionalized for alcoholism and actually spent some time in jail. Very dear man, but just addicted. I had 4 of my first cousins to commit suicide. Alcohol and drugs were involved in all of those. I had one first cousin that committed homicide. So when you see a just pretty ordinary 80-year-old woman, you may draw the wrong conclusions. You may think that lady had a pretty easy life. I can tell. There's so many families. When you get in and you start asking questions, you're going to find that I've forgotten the number now, families with addiction problems. Now, the thing that bothered me all the years from the time I was growing up, I was one of the younger cousins, and I began to understand and watch what was going on and make some pretty good decisions looking back on it. I was simply scared to death to get involved with those things because I was afraid that I would become addicted. And guess what? I would have become addicted. There was actually a minister and his wife that took interest in me. So whatever you're doing now in your ministries, you may be making all the difference in someone's life just by caring and being involved with them. But as I began to think, so much time in prayer, waiting upon the Lord, researching, I began to question the statement that if you're involved in addiction ministry or if you've struggled with addiction, you've heard this. You've heard of people being attributed as having an addictive personality. That bothered me because I thought, I know my family. I know them. I just can't see that it's an addictive personality. And so I questioned that, but it was not until about 2013 that enough science was unraveled, Mary, for me to understand it's not an addictive personality. It's malfunction in the body. So my background has been, over these past 60 years, research, teaching. My husband and I have been in ministry for 60 years. We pastored for 20 years. As Mary said, we have a ministry, International Prayer Ministries. And if You were involved yesterday in the National Day of Prayer. My husband is on the founding committee. We were instrumental in getting President Reagan to sign this in on the national calendar. So I'm only saying that to let you know that when I started doing what I've been doing for the past 13 years, people who knew me and knew what we were doing said to me, "Have you lost your mind?" So, Mary?
Very good. So tell me about your experience. I mean, you've been a researcher and a teacher and a counselor, health counselor for many years. And then 13 years ago, your own health was declining and you were introduced to the nutraceutical. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I had studied free radicals since the early 80s. We were trying to unravel what we called what's wrong with these kids, ADD, ADHD, and autism. But as we began, for example, doing some research lab work, if I had people that I was counseling with emotional problems, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, if you put the lab work up, so much of it was the same thing. We just saw it was just a puzzle, though. How on earth does this come together? So, why would someone with ADD, ADHD maybe show some of the same lab work as a person with depression? This was back in the 80s, early 90s, and now it's pretty much come together. I had injured my back. I'd had 5 years debilitating pain. I had actually closed my private school in Georgia. By my early 60s, I was beginning to suspect that I was getting another family disorder, which is early stage dementia. By the time I was 67, I had a pretty serious case of short-term memory loss. It was serious enough that my children didn't want me out by myself after dark. I was asking the same questions over and over. I was telling the same things over and over. And it was serious. I knew it was serious. I was doing a lot of praying. God, don't let me lose my mind. I was looking at approaching age 70 with loss of mobility. My back was that bad. And my short-term memory loss when my little wonderful chiropractor called me and said, "Miss Shepherd, a university is researching a new natural product from the University of Colorado for ADD, ADHD, and autism. I have an investigative report on it. Can you come to the office?" I went immediately to the office, watched the investigative report, ABC Primetime Report. You can watch it on YouTube, ABC Primetime Report dash Protandim. And we'll spell that later for you. I watched it and it showed free radicals lowering in a blood test. Even though I'd studied free radicals since the 80s, we hadn't seen them. We could not see that they were being lowered in a blood test by the use of antioxidants. That's why you take antioxidants to lower oxidative stress. What causes oxidative stress? Free radicals. Would not show up in a blood test. I watched the video and I knew that it was a game changer. I knew I was going to take this. I knew we didn't have another thing like this in the world, because in all of my years of working with all of this, I would have known about it. I started taking it. 2 months, my back pain was gone. The most beautiful thing was God answered my prayers through this nutraceutical, and in 6 months, my brain was back. Mary.
That's amazing. Let's back up a little bit. Can you tell us what is nutrigenomics and a little bit about the NRF2 pathway, the neurotransmitter, all that science stuff that you know so much about as it relates to someone that struggles with addiction? And what have you seen in your research?
Okay. Well, the science and the research is important to me because I work with other people's children. I have all these years, and I needed to be able to validate what I was saying. If you've read my book, Overcoming Mental, Emotional, and Addictive Disorders, you know there's this many footnotes in it. I have to validate what I am saying to you. So what it is, Mary, is the term nutrigenomics has to do with what we call the genome, which is all of this, the intricacies of your body and how each cell works with each other, how this one cooperates with the other one. And we thought for so many years that your genetics dictated your health. If your daddy died of heart problems, you were probably going to die of heart problems. This time of thinking. But we know now that is not true. Your genetics do not dictate your health problems, nor do your genetics dictate your mental and emotional and addictive disorders, as we thought in the past. So with nutrigenomics, it means taking natural elements. This is going to be your health, like fruits and vegetables and herbs and so forth, and using natural things that the body is designed to use. We were designed to eat food. Mm-hmm. You have never met anyone born into the world with a deficiency in medicine. So we were designed to eat food. Mm-hmm. And using these elements, it's the knowledge and the research of how to combine them for the best usage in the genome in the body, which actually then becomes another fancy term called epigenetics. Mm-hmm. It changes your genetic outcome.
That's incredible. So could I take enough fruits and vegetables to conquer this high free radicals in my body? Or why, what's the difference between taking this all natural tablet than doing it on my own with eating all the great fruits and vegetables that are in the gardens?
Well, I'm going to ask some people, if you're on here and you've struggled with addiction, could you actually eat enough blueberries to change your addiction? Of course you couldn't. And it wouldn't even cause you to become addicted to blueberries. What would happen is you'd get sick of them after a while. It was not until 2000 that they discovered that the reason antioxidants were not lowering oxidative stress in a test tube, they were not lowering free radicals. It did not matter what they combined, how the exotic juices is a room full of blueberries, it didn't matter. It would not change the blood results. And they finally figured out around the year 2000 what it was. If you eat them, it works on a 1-to-1. Like a molecule of blueberry juice, for example, wouldn't be that big, can eliminate one free radical. But most people will have 300 followed by 21 zeros free radicals every day when they get up. It was impossible. You can't eat it. So why would this 5 little herbs lower it in a blood test? The synergistic formula of 5 herbs, we found out in 2010, this was 10 years after it was discovered that taking an antioxidant directly could not show up in a blood test that it was making a difference. They found out that the reason this little pill was making a difference, and this research actually came through Oxford University, was it activated the master switch in your body, which is the NRF2 pathway. So this was such a big discovery that, yes, it was on television. ABC Primetime 2005 did an investigative report. NBC had a segment saying taking antioxidants is obsolete. You don't want to take antioxidants. You want to make them. Held up one of our bottles. Public television, this was out there. But it's kind of one of those things that might have gone right over your head. And especially if you were struggling with an addiction. You wouldn't have any idea that this little discovery, this little development could change your life.
Amazing. And it's become a patent formula. So there's nothing like it. Is that right, Jackie?
Right. We have 9 patents. And the reason that I've dedicated so much of my life to it this past 13 years is just so grateful The Lord led me to it, and I got my brain back and my mobility. The other thing is, once I started telling my friends about it, family members, my former students, they started contacting me. I well remember one day when one of my former students who had run miles in the parking lot for smoking between class, we didn't allow smoking, and he'd come in and I'd say, Matt, you were smoking. No, ma'am, I wasn't smoking. Matt, you were smoking. And it got to be humorous. And so I'd be like, Matt, you know you have to run laps. And so he'd run laps in the parking lot. I got him on Protandim. He called me and he said, Miss Shepherd, I finally quit smoking. It just became person after person after person calling me about giving up painkillers, hard drugs, alcohol. And the reason why was they were no longer craving it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had been looking for a group brave enough, because you got to get out of your box if you want to help people with addictive problems. You can teach, you can have a ministry, you can do all sorts of things, as long as you're only talking about the spirit, what Jesus can do in the life of an addict. Or you can have all sorts of addiction ministries if you're only talking about the soul part, what can be changed in the mind, the will, and the emotions. But if you've struggled with addiction, you know that I'm not going to say it's not enough, because some people can walk away. One of my closest friends in the world quit heroin and never had another bit of craving. We love those stories, but for most people, it's not true. They're fighting every day to not use. And then sometimes 15, 20 years later, they do the proverbial, what we call, fall off the wagon. If you get hungry enough, most of you, if you've never struggled with addiction, sometimes it's hard to understand. If you get hungry enough, you're probably going to find some food, because your body is craving food. The same thing is true with an addict or with water. So once these molecular changes happen in their body, and this malfunction was present before they ever had their first drug, their first drink, once those things happen, we're dealing with something in the body that can be and should be changed. We're body, soul, and spirit. So I was so thrilled when Dave said that, yeah, he would see if he could get some people to participate in a bit of a study. Mary.
Yeah, Jackie, let's talk a little bit about the study itself. I have some of the stats. Let's just go through that. And
I'd love to.
Yeah, I do have this on a blog if people want to text me. My phone number is 612-385-1870. And I can share the blog with these details. Eventually, it's going to get put up on the Lost Sheep Ministries website. But I'm just going to verbalize some of the content that Jackie and I were documenting. Okay, so as I said, 18 of the 24 were monitored for a full 6 months. 3 were monitored for 3 months and 3 monitored for 2 months. The addictions range from smoking, cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, sugar, flour. 88% shared that cravings went from high to low during their span. And here are some additional comments. After 30 days, cravings for fentanyl aren't as bad as they used to be. After 7 weeks, I used to smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a week, now down to 1 pack every week and a half, and only at work. After 4 months, I've experiencing less issues with Crohn's and insomnia. After 4 months, brain fog is gone, no longer overwhelmed, more energy, able to complete tasks. After 6 months, better routine, lost cravings for soda pop about 6 weeks in, eating habits are better. After 6 months, survived urges going through hard times in life. After 6 months, depression, OCD, anxiety symptoms have resolved. I'm active in my community again. After 6 months, blood pressure went down. After 6 months, I have thoughts, but not cravings. after 6 months. Symptoms of depression, anxiety, OCD, insomnia, ADHD, and migraine all improved. Okay, and then a couple other people, we had further sharings, and I'm just going to read what they wrote. A month into the study, I started coming off some prescription drugs. Several months later, I realized drinking alcohol made me sick, so I quit. During that time, inflammation went down in my face. I was feeling good. When the study ended, I initially stopped, thinking I didn't have the money to hold a monthly subscription to this activator. During that time not taking it, I had losses in my life and realized that while I was taking this Protandim NRF2 Synergizer, I was better overall. I also realized the money I was spending on alcohol would be better spent taking care of my health so I can be here for my family. I spoke to my team leaders about starting again. Within days, I was feeling better. Inflammation went back down. And within 30 days, my doctor and I talked about getting off of ADHD meds. I don't crave alcohol at all for anxiety relief because my stress level is down. I was a drinker on and off for 20 years. Diagnosed with Barrett, struggled with alcoholism 20 years ago for 20 years. Was a cutter, diagnosed with PTSD, severe depression, anxiety, insomnia, bulimia, anorexia. I've healed tremendously in the past year. All the glory goes to God. Since starting this little yellow pill, I've stopped propylene, Ritalin, Imitrex, and lowered the dose of Temazepam. I'm a completely different person. I'm still in awe of it.
Mary, this is why I love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it because helping someone to find out that there's a little bottle of hope. I'm going to take a minute here and show you guys a little science.
Okay.
I promise you that I'm not going to spend hours on this, even though I'd love to. I'm still hoping to get up there so that I can bore y'all for about a 4-hour session.
Yeah.
Some Saturday.
Amen.
We'd love to have you.
So let me show you, first of all, now let's see. Mary, what are you seeing?
Let's see here.
PubMed.
PubMed, yep.
Okay, let's see if I can get on your page. The Hunter and I worked on this and we came up with some good solutions, but now immediately I don't have him here. He left me to go see his girlfriend. Why would you want to do that?
All right, there we go. It's coming down.
Okay.
Yeah, you stress and addiction.
Talking about oxidative stress. Do you see this, Mary?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, now I've gone to the National Medical Library.
Okay.
And if I simply look up oxidative stress, which is the accumulation of those bad guys, free radicals, you're going to see we have over 300,000 clinical studies linking oxidative stress to any disease you could name. Now, the big surprise for us, early, probably about 2010, and maybe 2011, was that oxidative stress was very high in addiction. So how would that be? Isn't addiction mental? Isn't it a demonic? Isn't it mental? Isn't it emotional? Okay, this is indicating 723 studies say that addiction, the very root of addiction, is in high oxidative stress in your body. This particular one starts out with the therapeutic potential of NRF2 activation. Our product is an NRF2 activator. So the reason I'm showing you this is I want you to always research anything I say. So if oxidative stress is indeed one of the problems, or the ongoing problem, wouldn't it help if we could do something about it? Now, this particular, and I'm losing slides even as I'm talking. Let's see. Can you see Addiction Recovery Center?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
To make you, all right. The reason I wanted you guys to look at this one, and I was really hoping that we'd have some more addiction ministry leaders on, is because a lot of the people you're ministering to have a damaged brain. They not only have harmful effects in their body, in their liver, in their kidneys, in their lungs, but especially in their brain. So these are just some pictures. These top two pictures are normal, healthy brains. Like if you're looking on the top and you see how it rotates around, that's a normal brain. Now, this is a brain with long-term alcohol abuse. I want you to look at what's happened, how the very brain itself is damaged. Can this be corrected? It will take a year, sometimes longer, for the cells of the body to rebuild themselves. But what is the best thing we found out there to help your brain rebuild is this little NRF2 activator.
Wow.
This is cocaine on the brain. And this one, meth, is huge. Everywhere you turn around, you have people. You see, they're just cavities in the brain from using meth. Heroin. Look at this with the opiates. You think about, we have a population addicted to opiates, and these are inhalants to many young people. And look at marijuana. I remember in the 60s when they were saying, nah, it's not going to hurt. They're still telling that lie. When it is legal and more people are using it, you will see more and more addiction. I mean, not addiction, dementia. Okay, so when you look at these, a normal brain, long-term alcohol, long-term drug, if you have a heart to help people, then why wouldn't you want to help people? Why wouldn't you be willing to get out of the box that's not working and begin to introduce them to something that might? Now, I have another one. I'm going to show you this. I'm not going to I want you to look at where it is. Mary, you can put it in the chat box. I've gone to YouTube, and the link is Dr. Joe McCord, An Addiction to Nicotine and Cocaine. I'm only going to play you a few minutes, and then I'm going to pick up sort of the end again, because this is the scientist that put Protandim together from the formula the minister brought to him.
Management of addictive behavior. And I'm going to talk about a couple of really bad addictive behaviors.
Now, I'm going to go back, if I can, to the beginning of this. I want you to hear his first sentence.
Protandim help in the management of addictive behavior. And I'm going to talk about a couple of really bad addictive behaviors. Cocaine, which I hope affects nobody in here, and nicotine, which probably has affected some of you in here. And the amazing thing for science is just in the last few years, we've learned how these things work in the brain and what they have in common. And I, for one, was in the brain and what they have in common. And I, for one, was surprised that
Now, I'm going to tell you what they found just to save time. They found out that when you use drugs or alcohol, it affects the glutamate receptors in the brain. What's glutamate? Mary mentioned the neurotransmitters. Glutamate is your most powerful neurotransmitter. What are the neurotransmitters? These are the brain chemicals. You know serotonin you've heard of dopamine. Glutamate is your foundational one, your most plentiful one. And if it is in a mess, everything else is, including your GABA, which helps you to have maybe a little bit better sense and wisdom. So what they found out was that the drugs went straight to those receptors. And then they found out, and you can go back and watch this, I want to encourage you to do it. Then they found out when they addicted these mice that addicted them to cocaine and nicotine, examined their brains, discovered this was a huge discovery. Huge discovery. For the first time, they realized this is what's happening. It's storing in the glutamate receptors. Glutamate is what makes you feel satisfied or unsatisfied. It's also what makes you want to go eat ice cream. So this part of your brain, once it becomes disturbed with the drugs and alcohol, it is your craving for glutamate after that. And how does the brain interpret that? It's get me some more of whatever. So when then they gave the mice the Protandim. The mice weaned themselves off of cocaine and nicotine. And if you've heard me teach this before, I usually say they did it without any counseling. Now, why would I make such a silly statement? I want you to know that so much of this is physical. Someone may have started using drugs and alcohol because of a problem in their life, but they continue to use because of the physical malfunction. If we can, by one little pill, make such a major correction as Mary read to you, why on earth would we not do that? Mary, you can watch this. I hope you all will. It's fascinating. Go ahead, Mary.
That's incredible. Let's see. If you could take that off the screen, then I think at this point, what I'd like to do is let's just see where we're at. Let's go ahead and let's open up let's start with some questions. I have a few questions I'd like to lead us with, and then we'll open it up to the audience here. Okay, so why would I take this, Jacqueline, this NRF2, if I'm no longer addicted? Say I stopped using drugs or alcohol last week or last month or a couple of years ago even. Why should I take it now?
Because you want the signaling pathway in your body that signals damaged DNA to survival genes to work. You want it to work. Usually it's not regulated once a day. So it is preventative and corrective. It helps as your new cells are being made. They're closer to the correct and your original DNA. So it's going to help. You saw all those oxidative stress articles. With any disease, malfunction, including aging, oxidative stress is the cause of aging. Mm-hmm. It's going to help.
And can a person become addicted to taking Protandim?
You might get addicted to feeling good.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah. I'm 80. If I don't have my Protandim for 3 days, I have aches and pains. My brain's not as sharp. Yeah.
We want to be in that.
I won't crave it, in other words.
Right. Yeah. And how might our audience order this Protandim NRF2 Synergizer?
They have to, whoever invited them on. And a lot of our people are new. And so if you don't know how, you have to then get the person who introduced it to you. And then if that doesn't work, you're going to call Mary.
Very good.
The reason why is that there are cheaper ways of doing it. For example, if you order 3 bottles at one time, you're going to be able to get it a whole lot cheaper. Sure. So 3 friends could order together, in essence, is what I'm saying. Okay. Or husband, wife, child. If you have a child with mental, emotional problem, ADD, ADHD, autism, if they were my child or my grandchild, they would be on this.
That brings me to another question, and then we'll open up to the audience. Is this activator, this Protandim NRF2 Synergizer, is it just limited to addiction, or is it helpful for other issues, other medical and emotional and, things going on in our bodies?
Oxidative stress has been linked to over 300 mental, physical, emotional, and addictive disorders. High oxidative stress. If we lined up 1,000 people with a different disorder and we tested all sorts of things in their body, the one thing they would have in common is high oxidative stress. If that 1,000 people took one NRF2 activator, which we'll call it Protandim or we call it NRF2, it's the same term, interchangeable. If they all took one a day for 30 days and we retested them in a blood test, their oxidative stress will have dropped an average of 40%. Like, well, what if they've got something like Parkinson's? What if they've got something like cancer? It's going to drop an average of 40%. Then if they keep taking one a day, at the end of 120 days, 4 months, if we retest them, their oxidative stress will have dropped an average of 70%. For most of them, even for an 80-year-old, it was back to the level of a child in the clinical trials.
That's incredible. Thank you for your wisdom, Jacqueline. I'm going to go ahead and